All right, we got this 2014 Lexus RX350, and we've got traction control light on, ABS light on. It says check BSM, check all-wheel drive system, and yeah, we got some brake malfunction going on. So I scan it, we got a fault for a right rear wheel speed sensor. We can get the graph up here. You can see just from driving with the graphs pulled up on all four wheels that yes, indeed, our right rear wheel speed sensor is flatlined. It's completely
there. It just started working again.
So looks like we've got just a intermittent signal cutting in and out. We may have a sensor fault. It's a possibility that the sensor is messing up. Yeah, where we live, we get a lot of rust, and there's a lot of times I see rust will heave the sensor up off of the knuckle, and it can either damage the sensor from so much pressure, or it could push the sensor away from the tone ring far enough that it can't really get a reading. Also, rust can form, and a chunk can fall down inside of where the tone ring is and interfere with that sensor if the piece of rust is sitting right in front of the sensor. So a couple different things. We're going to throw this car up on the lift and do a visual on it and see if there's anything that's an immediate red flag. So let's see what we get. Okay, so we've got the wheel off right now. We did a visual on the harness. Nothing that was an immediate red flag. Now, this style of wheel bearing and ABS system has a magnet that's on the back of the bearing. It does not run a solid tone ring pressed onto the axle. So, with the amount of rust that's on this vehicle, there's a good chance that there's rust stuck to the back of the magnet, and there could be a chunk that's getting stuck onto the sensor, and then as the wheel's spinning, the chunk comes off and gets stuck onto the magnet on the back of the wheel bearing. I've seen that before. And like I say, it could also be that this sensor is so heaved out, it's either broken on the inside or it's just pushed away kind of far. But I think chances are probably more likely that it's broken. Hopefully I can get this thing out without it breaking, but we're going to just probably replace it anyways. So not a big deal if it does end up breaking. I gotta get a hammer. So much rust on that nut, I can't even get a socket on it. Wow, I'm surprised that came out. A lot of time they're just a little 10mm bolt that holds these sensors in, and they get really rusted in there, and a lot of times they snap off. So I'm glad this one didn't. The next challenge that we face is that the sensor is so rusted in the knuckle that it won't come out, and a lot of times they just snap off. So I just use pliers, and one thing you can try to do is just use like a punch and a hammer to try to knock all the rust scale loose around the sensor, to try to get it to free up a little bit, and penetrating fluid as well. But the sensor's made out of plastic, right? So you can't really heat it. But the penetrating fluid's good. So we'll see. I can't see with my hands in the way of the light. I'm just gonna grab a punch and a hammer and try to knock some of that rust scale loose to see if we can't get this thing out in one piece. So we got the sensor out, took like 20 minutes, penetrating fluid, just work it back and forth, and it takes a lot of patience to get this out in one piece so that you don't snap it off. A lot of times just this lower section underneath of the flange will break and it'll be stuck in the knuckle, and then you end up having to drill it out or use a torch and melt it out basically. So it's nice if you can get it out in one piece. Obviously this is the severe end of the spectrum for rust, so hopefully yours isn't this crappy. But what I'm going to do now is see if I can stick my bore scope down the hole and take a look at the back of the bearing and see what that magnetic tone ring looks like. I'm assuming there's going to be a bunch of rust and crap in there. Regardless, we're going to be throwing a wheel bearing and a sensor on it and see if the parts cannon will fix it. These Lexus and Toyota vehicles, they are not known for wiring issues. It's pretty rare. Not impossible, but pretty rare. Most of the time, it's just rust that will destroy the bearing. The bearing, I would say, is the #1 suspect for any ABS issues on these vehicles. And once again, it just boils back down to that magnetic tone ring that's glued onto the back of the wheel bearing. Rust will work its way around it and in behind it, and it either cracks or falls off, or rust will get stuck to that and interfere with the sensor operation. So let's get the video scope, see what we can find. All right, so that's down inside where the sensor lives. You can see all of the rust and stuff that's in there. And that's what I'm talking about when you get the sensors down in there and you got a magnet. So all that rust, that iron, is going to stick to the magnet and interfere with the signal. So it's just rust really that's contaminated everything. So what we could try to do, like if you were doing this at home and you just want to try something to see if it fixes it, is use some compressed air and try to blow it out and then put the sensor back in and drive it just to see. But pretty much in this case, we're going to be for sure throwing a wheel bearing on it, and the sensor itself may not be bad, but you can see all the carnage that's happened just on the actual like flange portion, obviously from spending 20 minutes with a pair of pliers trying to get that thing out. And the end of it's sort of bent in a little bit, which that may be the way it's supposed to be. I don't know. I think it's just straight though. But we're gonna put a sensor on it too for the cost of them. You can buy them online for pretty cheap. So we'll throw some links in the description. And also we will release a second video in the coming weeks on how to replace the sensor and the wheel bearing on this thing, just in case you're doing this too. So hopefully you like this video. Give it a thumbs up. If you got any questions, throw them in the comment section. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have. Subscribe for more content, and keep wrenching on cars. We'll see you in the next one.